power of owning your story. Growing up, there was always a club I wanted to be a part of. At school, it was trampoline and rounders. I was a very sporty child. At college, it was wanting to be part of the Popular Kids Club. And I remember I used to stand at the edge of the common room, and I longingly looked in, hoping someone would invite me in to be part of their group. They never did. At university, it was the Afro-Caribbean Society. And looking back, I was pretty successful at joining most of the clubs that I wanted to join. But there was one club that eluded me. Motherhood was a club that I was never going to be a part of. It is estimated that 1 in 5 women in the UK between the ages of 45 and 49 are childless by circumstance. And for many of us, it's a reality of life that we never expected to face. In October 2014, I was diagnosed with unexplained infertility, and those 2 words just changed my world. I was never going to be the same again. Now, I'm sure that I'm not the only person in the room that has dealt with a difficult situation, and I'm guessing I'm not unique in how I dealt with that situation. So you won't be surprised to hear that I was immediately silenced. I had no words to describe the feelings that I didn't understand. I was silenced because I felt the shame of my past decisions. I was silenced because I failed to be a mother and to do what society expected me to do what generations of women before me had done. I was silenced because I failed to give birth to my own child. And I was silenced because I failed to give my then husband the gift of being a father. And I failed to give my parents the gift of being grandparents to my children. And it really hurt to be in this place. It hurt to be around my friends and their young kids, knowing that our relationship would change. Feeling like their lives were moving on, but mine was just standing still. It hurt to be on a train and watch young families getting on that train, meeting up for a day out, knowing that I would never have that experience. It hurt to know that I'd never see my baby's first smile, see my baby take their first steps, or even hear my baby say, "Mummy." It hurt to know that I would never have a first anything with my child. And it also hurt to know that my parents will never have those embarrassing stories about my kids. Being on this road was a reality that I found hard to face, and for me it was the start of a painful realisation that I wanted something I was never going to have. Until that moment, I had expressed loss and grief, but this was different. It was unexplained, it was unexpected, and it was not allowed. Because let's face it, how can you grieve the loss of something you've never had? Now, we all carry baggage. It might be the size of a small handbag, or it could be that trunk that we're just always dragging around. But for me, it was time to put down my bag and start to open it up and unpack all the stuff that I believed other people would judge me for. It was the stuff that impacted on my ability to breathe and to be open about what I was going through. You see, in my head, everyone would tell me that I didn't deserve to be a mother because I had 2 terminations in my 20s. In her book, Living the Life Unexpected, Jodie Day so beautifully describes the difficulty in grieving that women face post an abortion. And she mentions that for those of us who have gone on to remain childless after having an abortion, there can be a dark shadow that hangs over us which says somehow we are not allowed to grieve our childlessness because we had an opportunity to be a mother and we didn't go through with it. It's another way of adding to the experience of disenfranchised grief, a secret even childless women share amongst each other. Since joining Gateway Women in 2015, I've been given the opportunity to be around some really amazing women. Women whose stories around their own struggles with not becoming a mother inspired me to write a letter forgiving my younger self. I told her that it was okay. I told her I understood why she'd made the decisions she made. And she made those decisions because she loved her children and she wanted the best for them. This really enabled me to own my story. Gateway Women helped me to normalise my thoughts and all my feelings, and it just gave me my sanity back. I also realised how much women like me, without children, were being silenced. We are being silenced. So with this in mind, let me ask you a question. What images come to your mind when you think of a childless woman? Is she that selfish career woman? Is she that woman that couldn't hold down a man? Or is she that woman that didn't pray hard enough or didn't have enough faith? If you met her, what would you say? Would you tell her, don't give up hope, to keep praying?
Yes.
Would you tell her, or would you ask her if she's considered IVF, and if she hasn't, would you ask her why not? You can say to her, why didn't you just adopt? Like it's simple and she deserves that consolation prize in life that's just going to miraculously heal her pain. These comments can be unhelpful and generally hurtful. It's these comments that go a long way to keeping women like me silent and struggling to find the help that we so desperately need. When we hear these words, we feel dismissed. Our pain isn't validated because in your minds, we could have done something about it. The more I realised that we weren't being heard, the more I wanted to give us our voices back. The pain and frustration that I was going through inspired me to write my book, Dreaming of a Life Unlived. Dreaming of a Life Unlived is my baby, and it was conceived amongst my peers and participants of Gateway Women. We came together to learn how to breathe and to find ways to be creative in our lives without children. The idea of my book was nurtured and fed with compassion and understanding, and it gave birth to a collection of stories representing women who are standing strong on their journeys to finding their plan Bs, or for some, their alternative plan As. It can be really difficult opening up to others, especially our family and friends, because they just don't want to see us be hurt. But they are sometimes the judgment in their responses. It can be difficult being at family gatherings, feeling like you are standing on the sidelines, feeling like you no longer have a place and you do not belong. So I created my book so that people who are not in my place could understand the difficult journey for women without children are facing. I wanted to reach out to other women and couples who needed the support and hope for their futures. Dreaming of a Life Unlived is also for friends and families of the people in their lives who give the essential compassion and support to find a new and satisfying future when their life is so difficult and painful. The words, I now know how to better support my friends, from a woman who read my book, just will stay with me forever. Maya Angelou said there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. I started to feel a sense of pride when I shared my story. Once I had done it, I couldn't believe the positive responses that I received and how free I felt. Now, I know not everyone will do what I do because I do speak around, I have interviews and I'm a public speaker. But just being able to share your story with your own family and friends can be such an empowering experience. And it's an experience that opened many doors for me. So in 2018, Jodie Day, the founder of Gateway Women, asked me why black women were not connecting with her regarding dealing with their grief or childlessness. And this question really took me by surprise, because being a black woman, I'm talking to her, and I couldn't see how race and culture impacted on my ability to breathe and talk about my situation. But when I thought about her question and I talked to my friends, I started to think about my own experience as a black woman. And I realised how much of a proud family and a proud race I come from. The stories of how my parents grew up in the Caribbean and their experiences of no blacks, no Irish, no dogs when they came to England really framed the way, the messages they gave to me and to us as children. And I realised how much we had to continue to silence ourselves, and let alone how society had silenced us. Statements such as, what will the neighbours think? Don't bring shame on the family. You must keep your problems at home. They went a long way into framing how we talk and how we function. I remember I was told as a young woman that I had to work twice as hard as my white friends because I'm a woman and I'm black. I somehow felt that I couldn't show any form of weakness. I had to be strong. I had to be better. So I realised as a race we just put on our masks and we live our lives keeping our problems in our suitcases. So in my guest blog for Gateway Women, titled The Black Woman in the Room, I reflected on the situations where I felt like the angry black woman in the room, the times where I felt like being a black woman amongst my peers made me automatically stand out, and feeling different, and being treated differently. In my experiences, I found that as a vocal, opinionated black woman, I've been perceived as aggressive or angry, where my white counterparts are seen as passionate. I also learned from my friends that they had experiences where white people wouldn't even talk to them unless they felt safe to do so, or if they felt that it was okay in that cultural parameter. These experiences are really subtle and very difficult to talk about or be heard and accepted. As well as stereotyping, there are other experiences that black women face that further perpetuate our inability to speak up. These include, and not exclusive to, colorism, cultural weathering, objectification, and post-traumatic slave syndrome. In my research, I read that on one level, darker-skinned women are less likely to be married than lighter-skinned women. And on another level, the pay difference in pay rates between lighter and darker-skinned men mirrors the difference in pay between whites and blacks. Lighter-skinned black people are perceived to be more intelligent, educated black people, regardless of their actual skin colour, and are remembered by job interviews as having lighter skin. Darker-skinned black women report higher experience of microaggression, which affects their mental health and well-being. Darker-skinned black women report more psychological deterioration and self-report worse health than lighter-skinned women. Arlene Genomis was a student at Princeton University in her late 70s and is now a public health researcher and professor at the University of Michigan's Population Studies Center. Now, she noticed that teenagers were suffering chronic health conditions more so than their whiter, better off Princeton classmates. Arlene began to wonder how much of the health problems that the young mothers in Trenton experienced were caused by the stresses of their environment. Arlene wrote, "What I've seen over the years of my research and lifetime is that the stresses that impact people of colour are chronic and repeated through their whole life. And that increases a general health vulnerability, which is what cultural weathering is." Arlene used the metaphor of playing the game of Jenga. They pull out one piece at a time, and another piece, and another piece, until you sort of collapse. You start losing pieces of your health and well-being, but you still try to go on for as long as you can. Arlene mentioned that there's a point where enough pieces have been pulled out of you that you can no longer withstand and you collapse. Tom Jenkins is a senior staff writer at Pacific Standard, and he wrote an article at the time when Serena Williams was penalised at the US Open for allegedly cheating and then expressing anger over the accusation. New research doesn't address this issue directly, but it suggests black women who suspect they are looked at differently than their white counterparts may be right. It reports that at least under certain circumstances, black women are more likely than whites to be both sexually objectified, perceived as less than fully human. These unconscious biases on part of the whites can guide their beliefs and behaviours. The dehumanisation and objectification of black women still persists today, albeit more subtly than in past decades, writes the research team led by psychologist Joel Anderson of the Australian Catholic University. Dr. de Grey's post-traumatic slave syndrome theory explains that etiology of many of the adaptive survival behaviours in African American communities throughout the United States and the diaspora. It is a condition that exists as a consequence of multi-generational oppression of Africans and their descendants, resulting from centuries of chattel slavery. Former slavery that was predicted on the behalf that African Americans were inherently genetically inferior to whites. This was then followed by institutionalized racism, which continues to perpetrate injury. I remember speaking to a counsellor friend of mine about this, and she mentioned that at the time of slavery, There was no support system for what black people were going through. No one cared. No one worried about them. No one provided them with any kind of relief. Post-slavery, there was no support, no therapy to help them deal with what they had gone through. There was no way of healing from this traumatic experience. So the message from slavery of don't talk about your problems outside the family, don't show any weakness, don't bring shame on the family, got passed down from generation to generation, and these messages remain in our genetic memory. In her article for the Leadership Academy, Mavia Gordon mentions that her belief is that black people are inherited internalized oppression from 400 years of slavery, as we've been taught that white people are better than us. Even though no living white person is responsible for slavery, the AMN people still bear the scars of it. I have used this example to show how much black women, black people battle for an equal place and an equal voice, and how much we've been silenced in our everyday lives. Reflecting on my experiences, my friends' experiences, and the stories that I have read, I wonder how safe black women, even black people, feel to talk to white people about our problems, let alone how much we struggle ourselves. I'm sure that we've all experienced a situation where we're told that it's all in our heads. You're being oversensitive. I'm sure they didn't mean it in that way. Come on, they're not racist, they've got white friends. Yeah. Situations when we've been dismissed and treated differently from our white co-workers. But what has this got to do with infertility? Well, the Women's Health magazine and Oprah magazine surveyed more than 1,000 women and reported that infertility affects at least 12% of women up to the age of 44. And studies suggest black women may be almost twice as likely to experience infertility as white women. Yet only 8% of black women between the ages of 25 and 44 seek medical help to get pregnant, compared to 15% of white women. Black women were more than twice as likely as white women to say they wouldn't feel comfortable talking about their fertility issues with friends, family, a partner, a doctor, or even a support group. There are specific factors that also affect black women disproportionately, uterine fibroids and obesity, for example. These conditions can negatively impact fertility, and black women suffer at higher rates of these. The stereotype that black women don't have fertility issues is also real. Fertility in black women is rarely discussed or acknowledged as a problem. Breeding myths from slavery perpetrate the stereotype that black people don't have problems conceiving. I remember growing up, I used to hear that black people don't struggle with infertility because we breed like rabbits. However, there are studies that suggest that black women may be almost twice as likely to experience infertility as white women. For some women, it's their private sense of religion and spirituality that got them through. For others, the emphasis that church puts on reproducing, coupled with the lack of conversation around infertility, can make religious settings painful and complicated. It's almost like we're being shamed into silence, which then stops us from owning our stories. But without our stories, how can we affect change? The fixing phenomenon that childless women experience can be so crippling. I've lost count at the amount of times I've heard, you shouldn't feel like that, but you've got a good job. Have you tried that treatment that I read